Hi there YouTube and welcome to my channel. I decided I want to make a video about quite a sensitive subject maybe. This is for the serious stuff that didn't make sense to me while being a Jehovah's Witness. And this will be about homosexuality. And to me it's not really a sensitive subject, but I understand that for some of you guys it might be. Either because you're a Jehovah's Witness still and in the organization and you cannot be your true self, or maybe you left the organization and you are shunned for being a homosexual. Um, I like to start off by saying that I have the same regard towards homosexuals as I do have towards non homosexuals. I don't see homosexuals in a different way. I think they should have equal rights. I think it's very bad and very damaging that some cultures see homosexuality as a disease or something um, that is very horrible and bad. And in my opinion, people should do what they want to do with their genitals as long as they don't hurt anyone, as long as everyone is consenting and not underage. So that's actually what I think about that. And maybe it wasn't really obvious to me when I was in the Watchtower organization how much they actually talk about homosexuality, and now it becomes maybe more obvious because I watch all these YouTube videos by other XJWs, and I think that is very disturbing that a religious organization just really wants to control members when it comes to sexuality and actually stuff that happens in the privacy of people's homes. And hi there. And overall, it's kind of strange that they actually want to decide for people what they should do with their genitalia. That is really disturbing and disgusting. But I have here my laptop on my lap, and I just went to jw.org. What are you going to do? Are you going to sit there? Okay, just sit there. I put the microphone somewhere else. I went to jw.org and I just typed in homosexuality, and a couple of publications came up. And well, a lot of publications came up actually, but I just opened some tabs here with these publications, and I will tell you from which magazine it is. First of all, I have this very disturbing article that's called An Epidemic of Homosexuals. Like it's some kind of disease that spreads through water or air. And it's from the Awake from 1983. So that was 7 years before I was born. So I didn't read these articles myself. But they're all on jw.org. And it's on page 4 and 5, I guess, from the let's see, from the it's 11/22, so I guess it means November 22nd in the Awake of 1983. They quote some guy from some college for medicine. And then they have this part. First century Christians did not view homosexuality as something normal, like blue eyes or dark skin. They viewed it as the cultivating of disgraceful sexual appetites. When homosexual women changed the natural use of themselves into one contrary to nature, and homosexual men worked what is obscene with one another. What do they mean by disgraceful sexual appetites? I mean, sexual appetites. I mean, I guess they mean what people are into. Um, so who is the Bible writer that he can judge on what disgraceful sexual appetites are? Uh, it's very strange. Um, And they talk about homosexual women change the natural use of themselves into one contrary to nature. Oh, yeah, of course, because women are only meant to give birth to children. And probably every time uh, a woman has sex with a man or with another woman, um, she's supposed to get pregnant and give birth to a lot of children. And of course, if two women have sex, no kids come out of that. That's very obvious. But they make it seem like it's 83, okay, as if sexual behavior is only meant for reproduction, and that's obviously not the case. Or else, um, sexual behavior would be something that people engage in only to um, to reproduce. That's kind of strange that they already decide for people what is natural and what women are for. And the next paragraph says, yet, like other unclean appetites and hurtful desires, homosexual tendencies can be controlled and even overcome, stripped off as part of the old personality. In the Corinthian congregation, there were some who had been homosexuals, as well as others who had been thieves, greedy persons, extortioners, drunkards, adulterers, and idolaters. Yet, of all of these had changed, they had been washed clean, sanctified, declared righteous. So they actually compare it to some bad habit or some bad personality trait, maybe like being greedy or drunkard. I mean, all these stuff these things they name here, adulterers, idolaters. Um, these are hurtful things. I mean, you can hurt someone by being a drunkard or a thief or greedy, but if you're homosexual as a man, for example, and you like men, who do you hurt? Don't hurt anybody, as long as everything happens in a consensual way. Everyone agrees, and there's no one who's underage, a minor. Um, then what's the problem? Why should someone that's a homosexual change for the good of other people? I mean, homosexuals don't bother me at all. I mean, I have some friends who are gay, and I don't care what they do with their genitals, right? But obviously, Watchtower does care, so this is kind of a cringy start here, right? And then we have Watchtower from 1970. So that's a long time ago. 15th of May, and here's page 311 to 314. Maybe this was this kind of a bound version. The title here is The Spread of Homosexuality. Again, they treat it like it's an illness, like a horrible disease you can catch. They make it seem like it spreads and is as if in biblical times there were no homosexuals, but now in the 70s, damn, it's a trend. Everyone wants to be a homosexual. In the Netherlands, homosexuality has spread so much that the country has been called a mecca of homosexuals. I didn't know that they were called that. And today, homosexual themes and overtones crop up in stage plays, in motion pictures, and even on the television screen. God forbid that people would see this. Contributing to the spread of homosexuality is the trend toward legalizing it. Some years ago, Britain made homosexual acts between consenting adults legal. Canada and West Germany during the past year have done the same, and 2 states in the United States have adopted similar legislation. Well, that was good news back in the day, right? Because there was a big stigma around homosexuality. In some places, there still is, and it's actually a good thing that these people have some equality, freedom. And then, oh, that's interesting. There's this subheading: "What is it?" As if people wouldn't know what homosexuality is. There seems to be some vagueness on the part of many as to just what homosexuality is. No, there isn't. If there's some vagueness about it, probably you're 6 years old, or you're just, I don't know, you were living under a rock for the last 30 years. The common impression is that only sodomy is homosexuality, that is, males having intercourse with one another. Sodomy is homosexuality, but not all homosexuality is sodomy. Okay. According to Webster's Third New International Dictionary, homosexuality is erotic activity with a member of one's own sex. Libidinal sexual or lustful gratification is sought with members of one's own sex. Therefore, any activity such as kissing, petting, fondling that is calculated to arouse the passions of another of the same sex is homosexuality. And while most persons think of homosexuals as males, the term applies equally to females who carry on the same practices. However, there's not a word that is limited to female homosexuality, namely lesbianism. Is this written for kids who are, I don't know, 12? Why do they even have to elaborate on this stuff? I mean, it's obvious homosexuality is like between people of the same sex, and what happens between them is then a homosexual act by default, right? So why do they have to explain it? So cringy. And the next subheading is, does legalizing make it right? Whether governments consider it a private matter or a public crime is something for which they must bear responsibility. But each individual must decide for himself his own attitude toward homosexuality. Lovers of God, truth, and righteousness take the position of the Apostle Paul: let God be found true, though every man be found a liar. That Bible verses make any sense in this context, though. And they say, but each individual must decide for themselves his own attitude towards homosexuality. Yeah, but if they do, they can get disfellowshipped or reproved or whatever, because you have to have Watchtower stand on this subject, right? And not your own ideas. So they must decide. Yeah, they coerce people to think in a certain way, so they cannot really decide for themselves. Not really. And there's this other subheading, frustrating and unnatural. Is it any wonder that the practice of homosexuality is so often frustrating? The Creator made the two sexes to complement each other, both for the purpose of filling the earth and to bring fulfillment and happiness to each other. That man and woman were intended for each other is indicated by very structure of the sex organs. Marital intimacies carried on with consideration for each other, strengthening the marriage tie as well as the personality of each. Yes, where both husband and wife play the proper role according to God's standard, marriage is beautiful and upbuilding. A homosexual couple cannot fill the earth because two males or two females cannot produce children, but that's not our only purpose, I hope. And they say fulfillment and happiness to each other. Who is Watchtower to decide that two men or two women can bring fulfillment and happiness into each other's lives? That's not for them to decide, because fulfillment does not mean the same for every person on this planet. I mean, I am not a homosexual, and I don't want any children. Children don't bring me any fulfillment. I mean, cats bring me fulfillment, food, sports, but not children. So maybe I'm unnatural as well, according to this part. It says here, man and woman were intended for each other is indicated by the very structure of the sex organs. And they mean by this that a penis fits into a vagina, but a penis can fit into different cavities. So this is really cringeworthy to talk about. And actually they imply that homosexuals cannot have a meaningful bond or marriage. And in the 1970s, homosexual marriage wasn't allowed. So this is kind of outdated. And now homosexuals are allowed to get married. And then marriage can be beautiful as well and fulfilling. Who is Watchtower to decide this stuff? And the next paragraph is also kind of strange. Does not the very soundness of the Bible's heterosexual position at once underscore the unsoundness of the homosexual position? In the homosexual relationship, one party often feigns or acts the part of the opposite sex, physically, mentally, and emotionally, and so it is based on a lie. As the book Homosexuality, authored by the Society of Medical Psychoanalysts Research Committee said, it is irrational to try to find feminine qualities in a male sexual partner. Well, it's not always the case, but most of the time you have this male-female role assumption, maybe, in a homosexual relationship. Maybe one guy is more manly and the other is more feminine. And it's not that the feminine counterpart actually feigns it or fakes it. Why would he do that? But it's also a case of hormones, and um, it even um, when boys are young, they can have these homosexual not tendencies, but like they use their hands and they're like maybe playing with their hair, and they don't do that to be a feminine partner because they're just children or teenagers. Maybe they don't even think about relationships or marriage or long-term relationships. So when they enter a relationship, they don't assume this role of wife or something. Well, maybe sometimes that is the case, um, but sometimes both males are kind of feminine or both males are kind of masculine. It's not that black and white, but Watchtower doesn't understand this, and they think that it's irrational to try to find feminine qualities in a male sexual partner. Well, probably if you're homosexual, you're not looking for these feminine qualities. Because you're homosexual, you're into guys and not girls. So it doesn't make any sense. The spread of homosexuality means that many persons are taking up a way of life that so often brings frustration and misery. It is something detestable and loathsome in the eyes of God and lovers of righteousness. Our knowing what to do to avoid such an unhappy outcome, one disapproved by God, is the wise course to take. The following article discusses homosexuality's causes and prevention. Oh gosh, causes and prevention. They act like it's some kind of a disease. It's the worst. I mean, I know this is 1970, but it's so degrading. I mean, what if you're homosexual? 1970, you sit there in Kingdom Hall and they read this article. It's that must be intense. That very sad. And they say it brings frustration and misery. Who are they to decide? Did they have this interview with all the homosexuals on Earth, and they concluded that it brings a lot of frustration and misery? What brings frustration and misery is people who are hiding what they really are and suppressing their feelings and just being someone they're not because their religion says that homosexual behavior is bad and gays are disgusting. So that is a cause of frustration and misery. And it has nothing to do with righteousness. Like, if you're a lover of righteousness, you can be homosexual. What does righteousness have anything to do with what you do with your genitals? Oh, this is an interesting one. It's a Wake from 1980, from the 22nd of June, page 20 to 23. And there's a subheading, Why a Homosexual? Why then do people become homosexuals? Like, they assume already that you can become a homosexual. It's a lifestyle, it's a choice. What is behind the ever increasing surge in their numbers? There's hardly an issue that has been more hotly contested in recent years. Well, maybe because people are sick of hiding in the closet. They're just sick of not being themselves, and they just want to be who they want to be. And I'm very happy that now in 2020, in a lot of countries, people can just be themselves, and not to feel ashamed anymore for what they feel. So that's a very good change. Very good development, actually. Then let's see. The next tab is, how can I avoid homosexuality? Again, they make it look like it's some kind of disease. And this is from the from the Questions Young People Ask book, Answers at Work, Volume 2. And this is I guess this book is from 2008 or something. Chapter 28, page 231 to 236. And here are these kind of experiences of, I guess, non-existent people who are just these personas that Watchtower made up. Like, there's this girl that says, many girls in my school claim to be either lesbian, bisexual, or bi-curious, says 15-year-old Becky. Krista, 18, finds the situation similar at her school. Two classmates have actually propositioned me, she says. One wrote me a note asking if I want to see what it was like to be with a girl. Teenagers don't talk like that. They just don't. And where does this Krista go to school that people have propositioned her to engage in some homosexual stuff? It's no one does that. That kind of stuff doesn't happen. Yeah, it's kind of cringy. Also, I feel very bad for the young people who had to study it with their parents. Then we have an article in the Wake from 1986, from the 22nd of November, page 13 to 16. The homosexual lifestyle, just how gay is it? What? Someone really just made up that title. It was someone's job to do that. How gay is it? What does it even mean? Out of the closet and into the headlines. That is the current trend for homosexuality. Books, plays, movies, television programs, and news reports publicize it, usually as an acceptable alternative lifestyle. But just how acceptable is it? What does it involve? Does it live up to its designation as gay? And what about those who resist it? Are they narrow-minded? And God, does he find it acceptable? What does his word, the Bible, say about it? These are important questions in view of the propaganda for its acceptance. Well, this is also propaganda then, because this also steers us in a certain direction to have a certain thought on homosexuality. But they actually seem kind of angry that homosexuals no longer are only in the closet but also in public life and in books and in plays. Welcome to reality. Homosexuals are just a part of society. They're just people. They're just not like creeps. Maybe some are, but they're also straight creeps. Lifestyle unacceptable to Jehovah. Well, maybe not everyone wants to serve Jehovah. Maybe some people don't believe in Jehovah. So why should someone care about this who is a homosexual and doesn't believe in God, maybe? They talk about it as a lifestyle, so something you can choose, something you can change. If homosexuality is something you can change, no one would ever be a homosexual, would they? Because in some countries, homosexuals have to flee their countries because their well-being isn't sure. They're not safe. People might kill them. People might get shunned. No one would choose this lifestyle. So it's not a choice, is it? I mean, let's take me for an example. I might have a different lifestyle from other people. For example, I am child free, which means I don't have children and I never wish to have any children. Not now, not in the future. People might say, you might change your mind. Or maybe when you meet the right person. No, no to all of that. It's a personal choice. I'm going to stand by it. Also, I'm a vegetarian. That is also a personal choice, and I'm going to stand by it. And that's lifestyle choice. I can change it. I can say, well, from tomorrow on, I'm going to eat meat again. I can say, I decide to have children. So I'm going to look for a guy who also wants to have children. I'm going to start a family. You can change that, but you cannot choose to not be gay or to be gay, because if a homosexual can change being gay, that also means that you can tell a straight person to become a homosexual. I'm sure that it doesn't work that way. And now we have this, I'm attracted to the same sex doesn't mean I'm gay. And this is kind of a Bible teachings for teenagers from the Young People Ask section. It starts off with fact. In many cases, same-sex attraction is nothing more than a passing phase. It can be during puberty. Young people maybe experiment with their sexuality. They're not entirely sure what's their thing, and that's okay. But in a lot of cases, it's not a passing phase. It's not. Just like being straight is not a passing phase. And there's this question here: is it cruel of God to tell someone who is attracted to the same sex to avoid homosexuality? Yes, it is cruel, but because if you believe in God, you believe He made us. So that means that when He made homosexual people, He made a mistake. Does God make mistakes? Or did He just do that to bully people? Or maybe um, because He found it interesting to see what they would do, or to see how they would struggle? Yes, that is very cruel indeed. Um, it's like, I made you this way, but just don't be that way. And they have this illustration here and the text here: all youths face a choice, either to adopt the world's degraded view of sexuality or to follow the high moral path set forth in God's word. Because if you're a Jehovah's Witness and a homosexual, um, you can take a high moral path by, as a man, marrying a woman and have a family and live a lie for the rest of your life. That's a high moral path. And that is what God intended for you to do, probably. Or just live out your days alone and lonely. But personally, I believe if there would be a God, He wouldn't expect that kind of stuff from us. Only religions expect that kind of stuff from us because they want to maintain control over people and meddle in people's lives. And then we have a magazine. It's an Awake from January 2012. I really don't know what month or whatever, but there's Awake, and the Awake is called "Is It Practical to Be Honest?" And there's this article: is homosexuality ever justifiable? Who cares? Some may wonder, would genetics, environment, or traumatic life experiences such as sexual abuse justify one's giving in to homosexual desires? What? Genetics, well, they can play a role, I guess. Environment, no, 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 no. You cannot become gay because of your environment. If I hang out with a lot of lesbians, I don't become one. That's not how it works, y'all. Traumatic life experiences such as sexual abuse. Oh, where would that sexual abuse take place? Uh, Maybe in a kingdom hall, maybe by some elder or ministerial servant. Maybe just gloss over that. That's just not interesting, right? They don't think, because they say sexual abuse can maybe cause homosexuality, but not how to avoid sexual abuse or how to protect children from being sexual abused. No, 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 they don't care about that. They say that it may be a cause of homosexuality, and that's probably worse than sexual abuse. And they just compare this to someone whose tendencies are towards alcohol abuse. They compare that to homosexuality, which is a disgrace. It's very disrespectful and it's pathetic. And then we have a young people ask thing: is homosexuality wrong? It's probably very tedious, so you can be spared reading all this because I have the answer. And the answer is no, homosexuality is not wrong. But anyway, there's this quote from a probably non-existent Jehovah's Witness youngster. David, who is 23, says, "Growing up, one of the most difficult things I had to deal with was my attraction to others of the same sex. I used to think it was just a phase, but those feelings plague me still." So it's not a phase, David, you're homosexual. Why the feelings plague him is because of his religion. He cannot be a homosexual. He has to be closeted for life or just not act upon his tendencies. David is a Christian who wants to please God. Can he do that while feeling attracted to those of the same sex? How does God really feel about homosexuality? Why should we care? And it's maybe kind of a disrespectful thing to say. Maybe if you're a Christian and you're watching this, you're like, yeah, it's very important to think about what God thinks. It's, I mean, God is not here, right? I mean, even if you're a religious person, you believe in God, God does not walk amongst people. God is not a human. I guess God doesn't feel homosexual feelings. God does not have that struggle every day of his life. we're people. If we're lucky, we have 100 years on this earth. If we're less lucky, maybe we have 60 years. And people all have one thing in common: they all want to be happy and fulfilled in this life. So we should do stuff that makes us feel happy, right? And very important it is to not harm anyone um, while achieving that. But why do we have to think, well, how does God really feel about homosexuality? Because it's your life and it's your happiness. It's not God's happiness. And people always tend to um, act like God is a person, as a human. We humanize him a lot. And I really don't know if God exists. I'm more like an agnostic kind of person. Um, but if God would exist, we cannot fathom what he is or how he is. We cannot say, like in Watchtower, culture, they tend to say, oh, that makes God sad or angry or disappointed. God is not a human. God is a ghost or a, a spirit, a personality maybe, but not really in the way that people can understand that kind of stuff. Our tiny, tiny brains aren't um, developed enough, I guess, to fathom what the essence of God is. I mean, because it's very hard to understand that, people tend to humanize God. God is not sad or angry. God just is, I guess. I mean, that's my belief. If I would believe in God, that is the way I would see him. And who's to say that it's a he anyway? So that's kind of brainwashing culty to make assumptions about how God would think on homosexuality. What really never made sense to me is that homosexuality was viewed as something that's disgusting, that's a lifestyle choice, that it's something that you can change, like a pair of trousers or like a hobby, um, and that with being homosexual comes a lot of bad stuff, like diseases, disappointment, that you don't get God's approval, um, and I cannot even imagine how Jehovah's Witness gays or homosexuals in other religions must cope with that kind of stuff, because you're there in the Kingdom Hall and you hear from the platform all these disgusting, disrespectful stuff being said about you. I mean, that kind of brainwash must do something literally to your brain and to your self confidence. I think it is very inappropriate for a religious organization to meddle in people's affairs and to even assume what people do in the privacy of their own bedroom, in the privacy of their own house, in the privacy of their own lives and with their genitals. It's very disgusting for some old men to make up rules that should apply to everyone about intimate stuff, because it's none of their damn business what people do with their genitalia. And it's kind of creepy. It creeps me out because, I mean, sexual behavior is quite normal. I mean, most people, they have sexual feelings, maybe towards the same sex, maybe towards the opposite sex, or towards all both the sexes. Some people don't have any sexual feelings at all, asexuals. And it is very interesting that we live in such a society. We have different flavors, different types of people, right? There's no reason to judge homosexuals. I mean, we're all people, right? Either if we're black or white or homosexual, transgender, or whatever. It doesn't matter. We're all people. We all have the same feelings and same um, need to feel approved and loved by someone. So please don't judge. There's no reason you should meddle in that kind of stuff. So this never made sense to me as a Jehovah's Witness, actually, or as someone who was in the organization, and it still doesn't make any sense to me now. So I'm happy to be out of the organization and I can just be freely approving of homosexuals. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found these publications interesting, and I see you guys next time. Bye bye. Have a nice evening.